this is permissible. And if you compare the photographs of Abu Ghraib with the techniques, they show a remarkable similarity in terms of what was done. There was also then, of course, eventually the safety mechanisms in the United States system of government cut into play, and eventually the Supreme Court received a case on which it ruled absolutely decisively. The case of Hamdan versus Rumsfeld, June 2006, Common Article 3 applies. A dramatic decision by 5 votes to 2. Common Article 3 applies. What's the consequence of that? Justice Anthony Kennedy made that very clear in his separate opinion, in the majority, but a separate opinion. If Common Article 3 applies, al-Qahtani's treatment amounts to war crimes. Justice Kennedy didn't refer to al-Qahtani, but he raised the spectre of war crimes. What happened next? The administration went into panic. And it adopted, in November 2006, somehow managed to get through Congress, somehow even managed to persuade John McCain to support the legislation, an act called the Military Commissions Act. And buried deep in the Military Commissions Act is an immunity provision, immunizing from investigation or prosecution, or seeking to do that, because some lawyers in the United States say that it's not been done in a watertight way, any person who is involved in these interrogation policies from investigation or prosecution. But of course that opens the door to investigation or prosecution outside the United States, because it's now no longer possible to have accountability and the full bearing of the criminal law for violations of the Geneva Conventions and for war crimes in the domestic legal order of the United States, because an immunity provision has apparently been prepared. Now, at that point, there is a change of atmosphere in the United States, and what happened next is not in the book, but it strikes me as rather remarkable in indicating, in a sense, the power of words and the extent of the transformation that has taken place in the United States. The article that preceded this book, called The Green Light, in Vanity Fair, was published on the 2nd of April 2008. Within 6 days of that article coming out, and on the basis of the article, the chairman of the House of Representatives Judiciary Committee announced a series of hearings on the responsibility of senior administration lawyers for interrogation policies and techniques. I mean, I almost had to sort of pinch myself that even before the book had come out, there was going to be an inquiry into the very people that I was concerned about. The first hearings were held on the 6th of May, so just 3 weeks ago. I testified at the first hearings. You can go and watch that on YouTube if you want, or wherever else you want to watch it. And most significantly, by that time, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee had already got the voluntary agreement of most of the lawyers that I've identified, most of the members of the torture team, which I don't include Diane Beaver and Mike Dunleavy, for whom I do not ascribe principal or even secondary responsibility for what has happened, but the people up at the top have agreed to come voluntarily, but one declined to do so. The leader of the gang, so to speak, David Addington. David Addington pleading immunity from the jurisdiction of the House Judiciary Committee on account of his master's office. The Vice President is also the head of the Senate. Declined to come, at which John Conyers, chairman of the Judiciary Committee, promptly adopted a subpoena ordering him to appear, and he has been ordered to appear on the 26th of June to explain his role on all of these issues. Even more significantly than that, 10 days ago, the Department of Defense changed its position on al-Qahtani. On the 11th of February of this year, they had indicated publicly that they would prosecute Mohammed al-Qahtani before a military commission for war crimes, for murder, and for terrorism. 3 months later, on May the 14th, they announced that they were dropping all charges against Mohammed al-Qahtani, the 20th hijacker, the man from whom these techniques were designed. Why? They gave no reason. But behind the scenes, it's pretty clear that the reason is that his proceedings before a military commission would have become a trial of the persons who authorized his abusive interrogation. And One final point that no doubt many of you will be asking yourselves: did they get anything out of the interrogation of Mohammed al-Qahtani? Nothing. They got nothing out of him. How do I know that? Because another person that I spoke to was the head of Mohammed al-Qahtani's exploitation team, sitting in Washington in charge of a group of a couple of hundred people, a very able gentleman who assessed the material that came out of the interrogation of Mohammed al-Qahtani in real time, audio, video, live feed as he was being interrogated. Some historical and contextual material was about as far as it went, directly contradicting what the administration has publicly said has come out. So all in all, by way of conclusion, it is not at all a happy story. And it is yet to have, I think, a happy ending. Happy ending for me is about accountability, not necessarily prosecutions, not necessarily war crimes, investigations. And I was asked by the House Judiciary Committee, what did I think should happen next? To which the answer that I gave at the point, having put on the spot, was that the very first thing that needs to happen is the United States needs to get its house in order. And the United States needs to establish for itself what really happened as an issue of fact. What happened subsequently, in terms of investigations or truth and reconciliation or whatever, is a matter for others to decide. But what we have learned in the past is that a failure to come to terms with what has happened means that the unhappinesses about the excesses and the illegalities will continue to fester. And so what I think is of vital importance now, and my sole objective really in writing this book, was to ensure that the United States, and if not the United States, other persons, made sure that there was a proper accounting for what had happened and that responsibility should fall where it is due. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Sands.
To find out more about UCL, please visit us at itunes.ucl.ac.uk.